What is up, everyone? My name is Jack Sappel, back again with another live video. And today I'm here with another Christmas review. And this one is for the Superstars of Wrestling episode that was aired on December 1992. We're going really old on this review here. I'd never seen any of the Superstars of Wrestling shows or Primetime Wrestling or anything like that. I do have a few of those shows sprinkled in to watch, but it's going to be interesting to see how the WWE or WWF at the time kind of formatted their shows back in the day, because around the early 90s to late 80s, they didn't really have a flagship show at the time. They just kind of had different syndicated television programs in order to, to build up their feuds. And what I noticed with this show is instead of like what we get on Raw and SmackDown nowadays, you don't have the talent wrestling each other all the time. Pretty much all the matches that were on this show were squash matches. So don't expect me to get into really good detail about the matches that took place or anything. I'm basically just going to tell you the results because the matches are pretty much secondary. It was just short bursts, and you know what? That was fun with me, especially at the time. It was hosted by Vince McMahon, Bobby the Brain Heenan, and Jerry the King Lawler, and these guys were great on commentary. Jerry Lawler and Bobby Heenan played off each other very well as they were the heel commentators, and Vince McMahon was the babyface commentator in this one. And Bobby Heenan wishes for Ric Flair or Razor Ramon to beat Bret Hart for the WWF title. Of course, Razor Ramon getting a shot against him at the Royal Rumble pay-per-view in 1993, while Ric Flair got a shot against him at the Boston Garden, I think, in like an Iron Man match kind of thing. And so he also begs Santa to give him the career of Mr. Perfect in complete shambles and throw it so he can throw it into the trash in a nice box with a bow tie on it and everything. Because the reason being, Bret Hart was no, why am I thinking Bret Hart? Bobby Heenan was Mr. Perfect's manager for quite a while, I'm pretty sure. And it wasn't until like 1992 where Mr. Perfect turned babyface. He was a heel most of his run in WWE, but now he turned babyface and was siding with the good guys now because at Survivor Series 1992, he teamed up with the Macho Man Randy Savage to take on the team of Ric Flair and Razor Ramon. So, yeah, not on good terms with each other at this point. So, bit of heated stuff going on. But yeah, it was good. I liked seeing Mr. Perfect as a babyface, although he was just incredible as a heel. It was perfect, pun intended. First squash match of the night. Every match on here was a squash match, but first match of the night was Crush versus Dark Destiny, which was pretty much some jobber with a mask on. Crush, Crush. He had been through a lot of gimmick changes throughout his career. He kind of started off as the third man in Demolition, but at this point in his career, he was kind of like a surfer, laid back surfer gimmick. He came out in very bright colors like purple and orange and neon yellow and that type of stuff. And he would always talk about hanging loose, man, and all that kind of stuff. So it was a weird babyface persona for him, but he won with his cranium crunch, which was like the vice grip thing Great Khali used to do. It was pretty much that, but he'd pick up his opponent and slam him with it. So that was a all right finishes. Like the finishes back in the day were special back then, but if you compare it to the stuff there is now, it's not that incredible. But yeah, never got into Crush, man. He seemed like a type of wrestler that could never find who he truly was, because after this, he would end up being a heel and like a darker persona of this Crush character, and then he'd go on to be like one of the disciples of Apocalypse, which was like a bikie gang type thing, and then he'd join WCW and Chronic. Like he unfortunately never found himself in the wrestling industry, which kind of sucked, man. And then we get a clip from last week's episode of Superstars with Bret Hart being interviewed by Mean Gene Okerlund until Bobby Heenan interrupts Hart's opponents for the next couple of weeks in January. And he stares down Razor Ramon, which he's going to face at the Royal Rumble. He does the classic, throws the toothpick right at his face, and then a brawl starts between him and Razor. Ric Flair tries to get involved as well. But then Mr. Perfect comes out to kind of even the odds between the two. So was there ever a tag team match with Bret Hart and Mr. Perfect versus Razor Ramon and Ric Flair? I'm sure there was in the future. Maybe at like a house show or something. Because back in the day, WWF for some reason didn't like showing all the big guys wrestling at once because it didn't really feel that special, which honestly makes a lot of sense. You know, back then it did make a lot of sense. Obviously nowadays, if you just had a bunch of squash matches for 3 fucking hours, people would get. But yeah, it was an interesting time back then. And so Rick and Razor cut a promo. And by the way, if there is one thing I love about early 90s WWF, would be when they'd cut the promos in front of a green screen, and then in behind them would be like their logo and a cool background. I've always liked that about that early 90s wrestling stuff. And so Rick and Razor pretty much cut a promo saying that one of them will beat Bret Hart for the WWF title, so basic stuff there. Next match was Kamala versus Bill Koby, the legend himself. But Kamala, the Ugandan giant, he was always a very interesting character to me. He never really went anywhere too significant, but he was always a very cool character to see in the early days of the WWF in the 80s and 90s. He reminded me a lot of Umaga, like a cheesier version of Umaga. But Kamala wins with this really shitty kick to the midsection, a slap to the chest, and a splash to get the win. So that was pretty much it right there. And then Slick cuts a promo, because his whole gimmick was like he was a gospel singer or something like that, and he saying, "'Tis the season to be jolly and to give a helping hand to your brother," and all that kind of stuff. So pretty much he was a more racist version of Reverend Devon. I don't know. Next match was the Big Boss Man taking on Barry Hardy, which was the 3rd member of the Hardy family. That's not true at all. But during the match taking place, Doink the Clown showed up and tied up a bit of wire between the 2 guardrails. Bossman wins the match and he tries to run after Doink, but that dastardly Doink that caused. Oh fuck! I'm messing up my words here. We're live, damn it! Big Boss Man trips over the cord that Doink the Clown set up and has a good laugh. And of course, Jerry Lawler and Bobby Heenan are laughing it up, and Vince McMahon's like, "That's not funny! How dare he!" and all that stuff. God, I miss when commentary was good. Don't you just miss that when the heel commentators actually went for the heels and the babyface commentators actually went for the babyfaces? Good times, man. Good times. So they have Sean Mooney promote the upcoming show at the Boston Garden on January 9th. And the main event for the WWF title was Bret Hart versus Ric Flair in a marathon match, which is a 60-minute Ironman, which is basically an Ironman match for the WWF title, which got me thinking. Shawn Michaels match wasn't the first ever Iron Man match. Technically, if this is the 60 minutes, whoever can score the most falls gets the win kind of thing. I mean, this is technically the same match. I mean, just with a different name. So has this been a thing that's happened in wrestling all the time? I'm guessing it has. I'm not sure. But Ric Flair cuts a promo with Bobby Heenan saying that the Celtics can't win a basketball game and says Boston desperately needs a champion and says Bret's wife and says that Bret Hart's wife knows that he's a 60-minute man and says for the 3rd time he will be WWF champion. So fucking savagery right there. Saying wife knows he can last 60 minutes in the bed. Jesus Christ, Rick. And then Bret cuts a typical promo saying that everyone is trying to go after me because I'm the WWF champion, but every time I turn around, Ric Flair is there to pull pull me off the top, and that Flair lost the last time in Boston, says he'll prove he's the excellence of execution. The excellence of execution. I can speak, and yeah, basic babyface promo by Bret Hart. He was never really known to cut incredible promos or anything, so I'm not exactly shocked at this. We get Yokozuna taking on Richard Myers. He pretty much kills this guy, no questions asked. So yeah, Yokozuna, man, what an opposing force he was. He was always one of my favorite big men, in my opinion. Just the way he'd come out with the Japanese music, and he'd have the girls like take off his robe, and he was just an imposing force. I mean, this guy was huge, this huge sumo wrestler guy. Even though Yokozuna in real life isn't even Japanese, he just had the body of a sumo wrestler. So I'm guessing that's where the gimmick came from. But man, he was awesome. He was awesome, dude. I love seeing him anytime he'd wrestle. And so after that, we get some twat introducing Santa's little helpers from the South Pole. So it's like, oh, who could they be? And it's the Bushwhackers dressed up as Santa Claus. And they cut this really weird and bad promo saying that Christmas is just as fun on the South than the North. And they have heaps of presents for the kids. And they do this weird rendition of Santa Claus is coming to town. And afterwards, they lick the announcer. So, yeah, classic Bushwhacker stuff there. I hate when people say that they're from Australia. There are some wrestling fans out there that say the Bushwhackers from Australia. They're from New Zealand. Okay, stop saying that. Yeah, Bushwhackers, never got into them, man. Never got into the Bushwhackers. They always seem a bit out there. Even for me, they seem a bit out there and weird. But yeah. We got Damian Demento taking on Kerry Davis. Damian Demento gets the win with a leg drop and a knee drop to the neck. If you don't know who this guy is, I honestly don't blame you. Damian Demento is probably his most famous match was against The Undertaker in the main event of the very first edition of Monday Night Raw. So that's where you'll probably hear that name pop up sometimes. It's because, yeah, he lost to The Undertaker on the first ever Raw. So cool. They announced the main event for Royal Rumble 1993 will be Bret the Hitman Hart versus Razor Ramon for the WWF title. And Mean Gene announces the first 6 participants for the Royal Rumble match, and which are Ted DiBiase, Tatanka, Yokozuna, Bob Backlund, the Berserker, and the Undertaker. And Yokozuna was the guy who ended up winning the Royal Rumble in 1993, beat Bret Hart for the WWF title at WrestleMania 9. Also, he can lose it to Hulk Hogan just a couple of minutes afterwards. So, yeah, I never got that. Why did Hulk Hogan, like, he just competed in a match against Money Inc. for the tag titles, just decides, Bret Hart losing his belt, saying, oh, yeah, Hulkster, get in the ring and win the title. I never got that. I think that was Hulk Hogan's politicking at his finest right there. He was on his way out of the company anyway at this point to go do some movies and then move on to WCW. The final match is Money Inc. taking on Lavern, McGill, and Chris Hawn, whatever the fucking names are. And then IRS tells the crowd that they had been cheating on their taxes or something like that. I love the IRS gimmick. It was just the perfect gimmick for people to just hate at the time, because everyone hates the IRS. No one likes to pay their taxes, man. We want to spend our money on stuff we actually like, So they end up winning the match, and DiBiase makes one of the jobbers tap out to get the win. So yeah, Money Inc. was a cool team on paper. It makes sense. Ted DiBiase, the rich millionaire, with IRS, the guy who likes to take all the money from the common folk, the middle class people. So it just made a great heel tag team right there. But the final bit of this show was Sean Mooney running down the Rochester Spectrum, or how the fuck's that? I can't speak tonight. I don't know why. I cannot speak. And this show that's taking place on the 27th December, with the main event being Shawn Michaels versus Macho Man Randy Savage for the Intercontinental Championship. Holy shit! What a treat, man! If you were at that show, you are fucking lucky. And HBK cuts a promo saying that Randy Savage is an elder, and when he was young, he was meant to respect his elders, but he doesn't respect him and doesn't respect anyone but himself, and will take out the Macho Man Randy Savage. So, this was, I think, I think this was like his first year of being the proper heartbreak kid that he would become famous for, which was just fantastic. I mean, Shawn Michaels, he's just the best. He's just the best. And this was just the start of what would eventually be an incredible career for him. So, and not only that, defending the Intercontinental title against Randy Savage, who was already one of the biggest stars in the WWF at that time. So that was really cool. And then we have a promo with Paul Bearer and The Undertaker towards Nails. Does anyone remember Nails? His gimmick was he was a crazy cunt from jail. That was his entire gimmick right there. And Undertaker and Paul Bearer cut a promo towards him saying that he will go down into the tombstone and that Taker's not a kind man and he will rest in peace. So, yeah, another great promo by Paul Bearer. One of the best managers of all time, in my opinion. He brought so much to the Undertaker's character. In my opinion, it elevated him so much more when Paul Bearer was with him in the early days of his career, because it just added the spooky factor to his character a hell of a lot more. And he just did so much to enhance just the Undertaker's scariness in a way, because you have this fat pale guy going, "Oh yes, my Undertaker," and all that kind of stuff. While the Undertaker, because Paul Bearer was very high pitched in the way he would talk and all that, and Undertaker was just very, he had a very low voice and talks about dragging down the hell and all that kind of stuff. Obviously, maybe not hell during the 1992 era, since they were more aiming towards children at this time. But he was definitely a standout gimmick, man. The Undertaker in 1992, he was one of the few scary gimmicks, well, maybe the only scary gimmick that actually worked incredibly well, and he became maybe one of the greatest wrestlers of all time. So, yeah, man, this is just to wrap up the Superstars of Wrestling review. As the first episode I've ever seen of Superstars of Wrestling, this was very interesting to see what the wrestling landscape was like almost 25 years ago. Holy shit, I can't believe it's been that long. But seeing Bret Hart as the WWF champion at that time was really cool. Don't show the 5A for this, that now that I've just said that. But yeah, it set up some feuds for the Royal Rumble 1993 pay-per-view the next month. And this was pretty much the closest we had gotten to Monday Night Raw, as it would debut a few weeks later on January 11th. But yeah, for a first time, this was a fun show to watch. Nothing too spectacular, but you know what? If you just want a bit of nostalgia, if you grew up around this time period and want a bit of nostalgia, go ahead and watch it. I'll put a link to the episode in the description, but probably by the time you watch it, or WWF will probably like demonetize it or some shit like that. But yeah, this is going to be it for this review. I hope you have enjoyed. If you did, make sure to leave a like. Comment down below. If you want to see more from me, hit that subscribe button. I'd be glad you did. Twitter and Instagram's at JackmanLaw31 if you want to check me out there. Thank you so much for watching, and I'm out in 3, 2, 1.